How exactly did political interests, as the Ombudsman put it, complicate his office's work, and how likely is he to achieve independence from the Defense Department? Gregory Lick is the National Defense and Canadian Armed Forces Ombudsman. Gregory Lick, thank you for joining us.
Excellent. You're welcome. Thank you.
I want to pick up on some of the language you used in your report. You said that the Defense Minister's office tried to exert control in some investigations, and you were even given ministerial direction on the conduct of systemic investigations. Has Minister Sajjan or his office interfered with your office in a meaningful way?
Well, I think what that refers to is his request to look at racism within the forces, which happened more than a year ago now. We gave advice at that point. He has the authority within my mandate to be able to request me to look at something. Racism is an important topic, and we felt that it was appropriate for us to look at that. But we advised him that this is such a large topic that there's limited things we might be able to do to add value to the conversation. He took that advice and asked us to look at diversity. Diversity was already in our systemic plan. We simply advanced it a little bit. It's an important topic as well. But I think what more than anything that I am very concerned about is the inaction that's being taken on various things. So I gave the example this morning of the report that we issued and gave to him back in December of last year on issues faced by members and families and others who are posted outside of Canada. Not a sensitive information report, but something that is important for those people that are posted outside of Canada and the issues they face. The department was very positive in its response to us in terms of the issues we found, the recommendations and so on. But we had to wait over 6 months to be able to get even an acknowledgement of the report that we sent him. That's inappropriate. That's just inaction. And that's mainly from my experience with the minister's office, what I'm experiencing is political interference, inaction.
Okay, so let me just pick up on that, because the minister does control the public release of your reports, right? It would be the minister's office that decides when it goes public. So how does that affect that?
Let me be clear on that. Within our mandate, I have a responsibility to give him a systemic investigation report to take a look at. Normally it goes to the department to give a response to, but within 28 days, I can publish with or without his approval. And there is no approval process, but it is helpful when we get a response that says, we accept the recommendations, we have some concerns with some of them, or we don't like them at all. But we didn't get anything for 6 months. In fact, the response we have, it still doesn't have an action plan attached to it. That's what I'm talking about. But no, I have the authority to release publicly a report. That is the purpose of an ombudsman, to bring heat and light on issues, no matter what politicians think about it.
But you said today that it is clear, and I'm going to quote you to you, you said it is clear that inaction is rewarded far more than action. What do you mean by that?
Well, for that particular issue, I'm listening to our constituents and listening to how they bring complaints to us. In many, many cases, inaction or lack of leadership on a particular complaint brought forward in the process, that's just as problematic. And that is rewarded in many cases more than actual action. And that's what I mean by the people that are courageous, the leaders that are courageous, and the victims that bring issues forward. They both have to have the courage to get something done, to get something actioned. That's what I was referring to in terms of inaction is rewarded more than action.
And you say that the ongoing sexual misconduct scandal within the Canadian Armed Forces and the Department of National Defense is moving from crisis to tragedy, and you talk about a cycle of scandals. Where do you place blame for this cycle of scandals?
Well, I think it's on inaction. We had Madame Deschamps back in 2015 did an analysis of the issues that were faced on this particular issue, delivered to the department. And we even heard very clearly from the department the other day that it was simply a checklist exercise that the department went through to be able to say, yeah, we checked that, we checked that, we checked that. That's not appropriate. What Madame Deschamps was looking for was actual action and change to change the culture. Now we're seeing, well, we have to do another review of a review to see, not only in my case and the issues that I was talking about, whether how we should set up independent external oversight, but also about looking at the very same issues in many cases that Madame Deschamps already looked at. People are fed up. People want to see action, not another review.
You know, you talked about an erratic behavior of leadership that you say defies common sense or reason, and that the concept of ministerial accountability has been absent. What do you mean by the erratic behavior of leadership, and do you have confidence in leadership right now, including Minister Sajjan?
Well, we see, at one point when my predecessor brought forward an issue to the minister, he backed away from it, didn't want to hear about it, transferred it off to somebody else to look at. And there was really no action, no follow-up after that. Well, was something done? That was a very sensitive and important issue that should have been looked at, but it wasn't in the end. And so for me, that shows that nobody was accountable. That's problematic. And I think the other particular issue, we're seeing, issues brought forward by journalists, by media on, various things that senior leaders are doing, whether it's a golf game, despite the fact that they may have had good intentions in terms of taking care of people that may be hurt. The problem is they should have known better. Mm-hmm. That's the erratic behavior I'm thinking about.
Right. So, you're calling for this structural reform to make your office an office of the legislature, to give it the true independence where it's outside of any kind of reporting to the minister. But I wonder, you clearly don't have confidence in the way this is currently structured, but do you have confidence in Harjit Sajjan as Minister of Defense to deal with these problems?
Well, I think I'm seeing particular problems, and I represent a constituency of military members, veterans, families, civilian members of the department. And clearly what I'm hearing, it doesn't matter what my personal opinion is, but clearly what I'm hearing from a lot of people as we go to bases, as we talk to people, we hear complaints that the trust in both the politicians and in some cases leadership is broken. And even the Chief of Defense Staff is seeing, as the acting Chief of Defense Staff is saying, that he's seeing cracks in the system. That trust has to be regained. And all I'm doing in my particular position paper this morning is showing a way forward that would bring back some of this trust and provide some confidence for constituents. If they come forward, their issues will be dealt with. But the department also has a lot to do, and they seem to recognize it, but I just want to see action in that regard, and not another review.
The Prime Minister says that his government will make significant changes in the coming months when it comes to the military. Do you believe him? Have you seen any sign that the government is taking this issue seriously enough to make the kind of actions you feel are necessary?
I haven't seen it yet. And I say that because we've started another review. We just had Justice Fish in looking at the National Defense Act. He's made a number of recommendations with respect to the military justice system. I'm certainly not a military justice lawyer. I'm not sure whether they're good or bad. But at the same time, he said, well, let's do another review of the Office of the Ombudsman. It's not necessary. Come on, guys.
Okay. Gregory Lick, thank you so much for your time.
Excellent. Thank you very much, David.
Okay, so the Prime Minister was asked about the Ombudsman's paper today, and Justin Trudeau said he will consider it and will make, quote, significant changes to the way the military functions in the coming months. Anita Vandenbeld is the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of National Defence. James Bazan is the Conservative Defence Critic, and Randall Garrison is the NDP Defence Critic. Welcome to you all.
Thank you.
Ms. Vandenbeld, I wonder if I could start with you, and I certainly appreciate you making yourself available to speak to this, but I have to ask, on a day like this with a report like this, why is the Minister of National Defence not here speaking for himself?
Well, first of all, you saw that the minister answered in question period, and one of the things that we have always said, and the minister himself has said, is that more work needs to be done. That is precisely why we have had Madame Arbour look at this. We know that the Ombudsperson's office has to be part of the solution, but what we also know from everything we've heard is there's no silver bullet. And we need to make sure that whatever external independent oversight is put in place, that it responds to the needs of survivors. There are some who have said that it needs to be the sexual misconduct response centers in a wider mandate. Others have called for some kind of inspector general. There's many different solutions. The minister has said all options are on the table, and this is part of that. But in order to get there, that's what Madame Arbour's task is. And in order to start immediately, that's why we have General Carignan, who has already started in terms of creating the kinds of infrastructure and culture changes and institutional change that we need.
And I appreciate that Madame Arbour and Madame Carignan may in fact do meaningful work, but before this, we had the Deschamps report, and I know you say there's no silver bullet, but what bullets were actually used between the Deschamps report and the appointment of Arbour? Because it feels like we could have had an identical conversation 4 years ago.
Well, actually, no, because 4 years ago we created the sexual misconduct response centers. We put together Bill C-77, which creates a victim's declaration of rights. We did a review of all of the unfounded cases. There is more training that has happened. There have been a number of changes, and we did recognize last year already that Operation Honor was not having the intended impact that we had hoped that it would. And so even in October, you saw the minister, we released the Path to Dignity and Respect, which was a first attempt at looking at culture change, because we know we can't do it by ordering people. It has to be a systemic change. And then in November, the minister commissioned the Fish report to look at the military justice system. In December, he created a panel, an advisory panel on discrimination and racism in the CAF, all of which occurred before the current crisis. So these are things that have been going on since the beginning, since 2015. And as some things work, some things don't work. We know we're not where we need to be. The minister has said very clearly that we have to do more work, and we've seen the harm that's been caused. But you're now seeing consequences. You are seeing people lose their jobs. You're seeing people under investigation. And that, of course, creates more women and men willing to come forward because they're getting more comfortable that the system will be responsive. Our number one objective has to be making the system responsive and then preventing this from happening in the first place.
One more question before I get to Mr. Bazan and Mr. Garrison. If Minister Sajjan has been so present on this file, why do people like Mr. Lick say the concept of ministerial accountability has been absent and talks about erratic behavior and inaction by the leadership?
Well, I think that what you can see is that this is a very, very complex problem. There is significant institutional change that has to happen. Obviously, the Ombudsperson's office is going to be part of that. But there are many other pieces. There is the entire military justice system. There's how the military police operate. There are health implications in this. There are what are the ways in which people come forward? What are the services provided? The peer-to-peer support, the $236 million in budget 2021 specifically for sexual misconduct. There are a lot of pieces in this. One single institution like the Ombudsperson's office is a part of the solution. We need to make it more responsive and independent, but we also need to look at the big picture, and that's what Madame Arbour is doing. All of the different recommendations, and I say again, it has to work for survivors. It can't be something that we put in place based on people who are in these positions. We need to talk to the survivors and make sure that it is responsive to them.
Mr. Bazan, we heard from the Prime Minister today, said that they will announce significant changes in the coming months, though did not give a more specific timeline than that. What's your reaction to the Prime Minister's response and what Mr. Lick had to say?
Well, I don't believe the Prime Minister. He hasn't taken any action yet, including firing Defence Minister Sajjan for his inaction on this file. This lies at the feet of Minister Sajjan for being completely ineffective. And what we saw today with Ombudsman Greg Lick's report, this was unprecedented and explosive when you come forward and start talking about how political calculus and self-promotion and personal ambition is trumping taking care of the men and women in uniform. So, when you see the Ombudsman showing his frustration and the lack of action on stomping out sexual misconduct or taking the issue seriously, that just, again, speaks volumes to how leadership has failed, especially at the ministerial level. And as Mr. Lick said, there is no ministerial accountability here. It is absent. And that's why we've been calling for Minister Sajan's resignation. The government cannot lead the changes that need to happen. That's going to have to be a whole new ball game, because there is that lack of trust. As Mr. Lick said, it's been broken, and that includes at the top levels of the command table, but it also includes the political leaders. I mean, the Minister of National Defense himself and his lack of taking care of those who serve in uniform and are victims of sexual misconduct in our armed forces.
Mr. Garrison, Mr. Lick said he'd not seen many signs from this government that they're taking this issue seriously that will lead to the sort of change that really needs to be done. What's your sense of where things stand?
Well, you listened to the Prime Minister this morning, and it sounded pretty much like a tape of his comments in 2016. So this government promised to do all the things 5 years ago that it's promising to do again now. So I do thank Mr. Lick for pointing out that this government, or at least this minister, has no clothes when it comes to action on this file. And when Madam Vandenbelt says, the proof of action is that there's investigations going on. The proof of inaction is there was no investigation of General Vance in 2018. And the only reason that investigations are going on now is because very brave survivors step forward. It's not a result of anything this government's done to tackle the problem.
Ms. Vandenbelt, you pointed to the reviews and the studies and the investigations that are being done, but you heard Mr. Lick. He said enough is enough. We don't need to review this office anymore. We don't need any more studies on this. We need swift, concrete action. So it could look like the government is using process as a shield here.
Well, first of all, I don't think that one office is going to be the answer to all of this. And you've seen
start, though. I mean, this is not a new recommendation.
And in fact, what we are doing right now, we are currently already implementing 36 out of the 107 recommendations of Justice Fish. We have General Carignan specifically there, already starting as the Chief Professional Conduct and Culture, so that we have the action immediately. So that as Madame Arbour comes forward with the big picture, which we need to have, we are taking those recommendations as they come and implementing them immediately. And this is an ongoing process, and this is something that we are already doing. It's not something in the future. You see these things are happening already right now.
But Mr. Bazan, it seems like the process has been going on for quite some time. There's been a lot of studies, a lot of reports, a lot of recommendations, yet here we are continuing what is a very familiar conversation about the conduct in the military.
I think what you have here is the Minister Sajan's trying to muddy the waters. He never acted upon the Justice Assamp recommendations from 6 years ago. That report's been collecting dust on his desk. He's now got the Fish report. And so, as Mr. Lick said today, we don't need to have a third former Supreme Court justice do another review. We need to start taking action. That's why, as Conservatives, we support having the independence of the Ombudsman office. We believe that the Sexual Misconduct Response Center in the military needs to also be fully independent, so that there is confidence for members of Canadian Forces to come forward with their complaints that's outside of the chain of command, and they won't be reprimanded for it. And we need to make sure that and we've heard this as well in today's news conference, is that we need to start taking some concrete action. And so, as Conservatives, we said we need to have more women and underrepresented Canadians at the command table, merit-based promotion, but going out and seeking that. And our biggest concern, as Mr. Lick said, is that this is now become such a huge crisis that it's affecting our national security. When you can't retain individuals in our armed forces, when you can't recruit new people in because of all the bad news, and then you got major command positions that are vacant because people have been moved aside. This is a huge issue that we need to get moving on now. We can't let the Liberals just kick the can another 15 months down the road to after the next election to maybe act upon recommendations coming from some future report. We need to act now with what's already there from the Ombudsman's office, from Adam Deschamps, and all sorts of other sources that we know what's a path forward. Let's just get busy and get it done.
Mr. Garrison, can I get a quick final thought for you, because we're right out of time?
Well, Mr. Lick has put his finger on the problem going forward, and that's the lack of trust in the current leadership. And I don't know whether the problem is having a minister who came out of that military culture that he's trying to change, or whether it's having a minister who's too close to many of the people in the senior leadership who are being investigated. I don't know if those are the problems. But until we get different people in charge of the new promises, I don't think the people in the military can trust that anything real is going to happen.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. We're out of time. Ms. Vandenbeld, thank you very much. Mr. Bazan and Randall Garrison, I'm sure we will talk about this again, and a standing offer to Minister Sajjan to come on the show whenever he's available. Thank you very much, all three of you.
Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.